Hi, this is Vaughan in West Bell Pottery in Nova Scotia. I'm going to do a quick glaze video today. I'm going to film a little bit longer and then I'm going to clip it to put into another video. But I wanted to give you a quick thing of what I do with glazing, just so you can see how the studio works for glazing. I always sort things before I glaze. So this shelf unit has been sorted out so I can glaze with various colors and know what I'm doing by labeling. And then I also have, oh, there's my cat. And I set as many areas as I can with pieces. So basically I'm labeling, sorting pieces out, trying to match sizes or variety of whatever I'm after, so I can be organized. I had a bunch of T-balls left over, so I'm just basically gonna put some fake ash glaze on those ones. But so it's a matter of being organized. I have stirred up all the main glazes I'm going to do for the first shelf. So that I've got a blue-green copper red glaze that looks really good with my yellow oatmeal and a bright yellow oatmeal. I've got regular oatmeal, so 3 oatmeals almost open there, plus a liner glaze for the inside. Doing some jugs that liquid could be stored in for a prolonged time. So I'm doing a liner glaze in those, which is a benign glaze that doesn't leach. But anyway, it's organization and basically trying to get everything ready before you start to glaze. So all your things that you think you need: a funnel, something to pour glaze, a sponge for wiping, some water. So get organized and make sure you got everything ready. Because the last thing you want to do is dip something and then realize something's not ready. And I also have tongs, so if I have to, I don't use tongs very often because I don't dip with my fingers into the glaze, but put those in the water, get them clean. So basically I got lots of choice. So then I basically just have to decide what I'm going to do. I glaze one of these first. So obviously I've got to get the glaze into a narrow opening, so you're going to use a funnel. Pour the glaze in. Remember not to over pour because you really don't want to fill it up too much. Shake it around. It's a liner glaze. Alright, so then I've got this bucket. Now I know this glaze from experience, it looks really good. Always give your glaze a quick stir. I just stirred all these glazes up with an electric drill paint mixer basically. That's how I mix all my glazes. This glaze looks really good if it's darker, so it has to be held in for around about 3, 4, 5 seconds. And then I lift it out. If you get it on too thick, you lose all your carving and fluting. Make sure there's no drips because I don't want to get anything in my other glaze. Then I have this, which is a sand color. I just stirred this, so it should be fine. So I'm going to go down. I don't want too much. So you can see I've got the line basically on the top. Then this glaze looks great over the top of that one. So I just add a little of that bright yellow. Make sure it's not running too much, although runs can actually be nice. So that's what we've got so far. And then I like to fire on stilts because a little run coming down there, it won't hurt because it looks good over that yellow. Now I could leave it if you don't fire on stilts. I fire on stilts. You can leave it. It's glazed to the foot. But I can actually just glaze this one on the bottom so it overlaps there, and that always looks good over this glaze as well. And then I can fire on stilts, or I can, because I leave that underneath my pieces, I have that hollow area. I can actually wipe the glaze off that and just fire it right on the foot itself. So I'll do that to this one just to demonstrate. While the glaze is still a little wet, it's a good time just to wipe it right off and you end up with 3 dips all on one piece, and even a different dip on the bottom, so 4 dips. And of course it dries fast, so you can hold it. Biscuit at 06 is the reason I've always done that, because things dry pretty quickly. So there we go. Now tea bowls. Actually, let's just get that one on now. Let's do a mug. So mugs. Now, I always blow it. Some people wash their bisque before they dip them, but I've never done that. And it's basically same again. I always do the liner glaze on my mugs, unless I know the glaze is really good. Then I can risk it with some of the glazes because they're so safe anyway. Pour it out. That was about 3 seconds. Then I hold it by the base, place it down at a tiny angle so that I get a little bit overlapping the inside lip. Hold it. This glaze looks good at about 3 to 5 seconds. And that all depends on your thickness, remember. Make sure no drips. Starting to get a little matte on the surface. I'll give it a swish so that I get an irregular line. Hold it in the yellow. Take a look. That's a yellow glaze. It's basically my satin matte with some yellow sunshine stain from Mason Stain. So there you've got that. So it's an irregular splash so that it gives it a little bit more interest, basically. Then I'm just waiting for a tiny bit of time just so I can grip it and dip it in the oatmeal again. Yeah, that one just missed on that one little edge. I try not to get a thick glaze on the bottom of my pieces. I don't want it too thick on the bottom because if I'm going to fire on stilts, I want to be able to knock the stilt off without leaving much of a mark at all. Those are the stilts. All right. Pretty much the same for a tea bowl. And then give this a stir again. Got a bucket of water there so I can rinse off the stick each time. We all forget to do things every so often, but try and remember as much as possible so you don't contaminate your glazes. Now every glaze is different unless you use a hydrometer to actually tell your thicknesses. So, but you can see that's a pretty good coating of glaze. Different glaze on the inside. Wait until it goes slightly matte, and you can actually wait a complete day to go by and still reglaze something. If I don't do it while it's still a little shiny, I sometimes get some crawling, so you lose a little bit of the shine and then dip it. So you got the glaze on there. So I try not to get my fingers in the glaze. I always get a bit of dry glaze off the glaze bucket on you. Now this one is a little shiny, so I'm going to wait to glaze the bottom on this one until later on when I can actually hold the top of it. These pieces kind of hard to hold I did these at the same time as I did the martini glasses. It's the same type of stem idea I was throwing there, but I decided to make a few candle holders I mentioned in the video, I think. Tongs. And then you judge your glaze by, number of seconds will give you the best result. And with tongs, of course, you can then go, as long as you don't dip the tong pot. I hate to get the glaze off the tongs in the piece, but I'm going to go really carefully there, just to give an accent. And then really carefully there. If you dip the tongs in, some glaze from the tongs, not much, but it can go in your other glaze. So I try not to dip the tongs in, just the actual piece of pottery, which is already stiffening the glaze on the surface, so that doesn't transfer to the other glaze bucket. One piece wouldn't hurt, obviously, but if you did multiple pieces over a month or two, you can change the glaze that you're dipping into. And then with tongs, you simply place it down, put your piece on top, and let go carefully, and that's how you release. So I have got lots to glaze today. Another thing that you can make mistakes on is if you have glazes that have a lot of clay in them, double dipping can actually result in the glaze cracking and peeling off. So that's another reason why I glaze at the same time with multiple glazes, because until the glaze, if you don't want to saturate the clay either, but basically I have less peeling issues of glaze when it gets a little thicker if the glazes have less clay in them. But a way you can get around that sometimes is if you glaze one day, let the piece thoroughly dry overnight, and then the next day you can quickly dip it in another glaze, and actually the peeling issue doesn't happen as much. But you can still get it. It depends on your glazes. Every glazes are different, and it's shrinkage rate. Basically, when you're wetting a glaze, it expands and then it has to shrink again. And I've noticed that the powdery glazes don't do it, but whereas the actual glazes that have a lot of clay in them seem to blister off a little bit sometimes. Another technique I'm going to show you quickly with this coffee mug is how to glaze one coat. Okay, this is a safe glaze, it's 10 Moku gold, just iron in there. You can actually hold your mug at an angle, almost horizontal until you get to the surface, then you tip it into the glaze, get some glaze inside and shake it up and down so that you're causing a drop and increase in pressure, and it makes the glaze splash all the way up onto the bottom of the piece. This is 10 Moku gold, as I said, and then basically, and this is a glaze I tend to put on the other coats on the second day as well. Is it running? See, all the way in. So you don't have to pour a line of glaze on this glaze because it's so safe. But basically, that's another way of glazing. Okay, I finished the glazing. You can see here, and I've got my little labels on telling me what I've got on there, and I decided to use a lot of my turquoise, blue, green, copper, red as a coat on the top of pieces, and using my oatmeals over the top of those. But on a lot of these I'm not going to do that till tomorrow because they actually could crack off. Now these ones I know for sure that if I put the glaze on too thick, they will crack, and you can see if I hold you really close here, there are some little cracks starting to develop. So if I'd gone any thicker than that, that would be peeling by now, because as they dry, they peel off. So that glaze I know for sure that I have to be very careful with. If you can look inside the spout here, see that one? So that is really, I may have to rub that on a little bit as it dries and forms dust. I can stop that from peeling off, but that's what you have to look out for when you glaze 2-3 times and getting it thick. These have been glazed with 3 layers, and if you count the inside layer too, that's 4. so it was bordering on getting really thick. So, but I took a chance with those because I know that glaze combination, and I usually get away with it. Now this one is the fake ash, and that one is a glaze that has a lot of clay in it, and even that one, by putting the same as I did with the other, you can see those beginning little cracks. So that's when a glaze is too thick, or if you've got multi-layered glazes, they just don't fit properly as they're drying. But the rest of them, that's my turquoise up there. I'm going to do some glazes. That's a couple of tomato. No, that's actually the Randy's red that I'm going to be doing some more tests on. And then here I've got my bright blue glaze. That one I will be glazing over the top of tomorrow. It likes to be glazed the second day. And now we have the floor of glazing. This is that fake ash glaze I told you about. It's a brand new glaze for me. I've only ever used it on its own. And this is what happens if you layer the oatmeal over the top. It completely flaked off on the one on the right. You can see it didn't do quite as bad, but there's less of it on there. So that's the combination that I have to make a note that we cannot use. It just is not the right shrinkage rate. The clay-based glaze, which is underneath, fake ash has a lot of clay in it, a red art, and basically my oatmeals that are over the top are fine on everything else. Good morning, it's Vaughan at Westcote Bell Pottery in La Have, Nova Scotia. I have done 2 kiln firings with slightly different ramp holes using the same glazes, just to see if there's any difference. The one that I unloaded yesterday, there's the profile. So basically, and I was looking specifically for this is the gray glaze that kind of likes I would say a slow cooling process, and this one's fairly shiny, and I'm trying to get it totally matte because I have done in the past, but it's on a very slow cool, so I'm trying to figure out if I can save energy by cooling at as fast as possible without wasting energy trying to slow down the cooling process. But the rest of the glazes tend to look fairly much the same. Anyway, I'm doing a fast forward high speed glaze unpacking for this lot here, so I won't bother to showing you too much now. So you can watch that at the end of this segment. You'll see there's a speeded up version that you can watch. But anyway, so this one is, see if I can get some better light here. This one is 10 Moku gold with oatmeal on the bottom and a little bit of blue. It's got blue and oatmeal on the top, which gives it those cloudy areas on the top. But you can see the 10 Moku gold speckles are working perfectly. I always get this glaze right, so it's never been an issue for me. In the video I showed you some glaze pots that had cracked completely off. I washed them off and I glazed them with my fake ash glaze. So that's what those ones look like, with the turquoise on the inside. They were the ones that were all cracked as I glazed them, and I showed you earlier in the video. So you can save pieces, you just wash them off and do them again. That's another one of those. This is my bright blue, some people call it floating blue. I also have oatmeal over it, and I have a darker blue glaze that I dip over that one to give it some variation. The floating blue I think is the one that's on the bottom there. I call it bright blue. It's in cone 6 glazes. So there's another 2 of those. I glaze in 4s whenever I do glazing. I tend to make 4s, as I've mentioned before. But so all these the same type of glaze. My floating blue, which is bright blue, but also with my dark blue glaze and an oatmeal over the top. These are my blue, green, copper, red. Oh, that one looks like it, well, it almost crawled. I mean, I don't know quite what happened there, but this one is the blue, green, copper, red with my oatmeal and my, I think it's just the oatmeal over the top of those ones, actually. I might have to look at those because I think I got some crawling. Yeah, not this one here. You can always glaze again, but they're really pretty. These are a couple of just test pieces I did with my yellow oatmeal over the top and also my blue. So you can see the yellow on that one. And that's kind of interesting. That's with the Seafoam turquoise. You'll find that recipe all over the place online. Some tea bowls in 10 Moku gold. And the oatmeal's over the top rim. I even had some blue over the top rim there as well, but the blue gets absorbed, that floating blue, by the 10 Moku gold, although you can see it a little bit more on the inside, dripping down a bit on the inside. That's another tea bowl the same. Still firing, just do that and it comes right off. This is one of my favorite glaze combinations with my yellow oatmeal and my gray mouse brown, they call it in the book. But that's the gray. And this one always looks nice too. It's basically my blue, green, copper, red with my yellow oatmeal and regular oatmeal over the top. More of that one. This one's different. This is a glaze that runs a lot, and I've learned how to control it by the number of seconds that I dip it, but it always tends to run by the handles. But it's a really pretty glaze. It's variegated blue, and it has my dark blue and the oatmeal just dipped on the upper edge, just to give it a little difference. And there's another one of the blue, green, copper reds with the turquoise, with the oatmeal. Okay, 10 Moku gold. These mugs look really pretty. And there's another one there. If anybody's ever interested, I sell these ones for anything from $24 to $29 a piece. Canadian dollars, there you go. Two more. There's the mouse grey. It's still not going as matte as I wanted it to, but it looks nice. It's you can see little bits of crystallizing out there. So in the past, I've slowed the glaze firing down to 75 degrees an hour, and it actually goes matte from 2000 down to 1750, but that takes 2 or 3 hours to cool in that area. But you get really nice matte if you do that. If you watch the beginning of the video, you'll see the building that I'm in, the gallery and the studio. We put these fish on the outside of the building just to make it funny and humorous. It's really to give the building eye appeal so that when people drive by, it might spark some interest and make somebody stop. So I put those on. They're out there now, and of course it's freezing at the moment in January. And they can basically take the cold. There's another big one. I've had tiles on the outside of my building for about 30 years, and I epoxy glue the tiles onto a wooden board. The wooden board rots out before the epoxy glue gives up. It just never gives up. The wood board has to be taken off every so often, and then I release them by chiseling and sanding to get the tile off the wooden board, because it's the wood that rots out underneath the tile. There's a couple more of these fish. somebody wanted a turquoise fish, so I did some turquoise. There you go. So basically, let's see. I should have some more regular pots underneath here. There you go. Okay, we have a bunch of tea bowls in the 10 Moku gold. So the 10 Moku gold is working great. I showed you the profile before I started videoing there. So if you use 10 Moku gold, that's the way to get it. This is a new glaze color combination using Seafoam with my oatmeals. I have a yellow oatmeal and a regular oatmeal. So that's very pretty. And that one is the tomato red glaze called ketchup red, and it does go very nice warm reddish brown. And there's another one of the turquoise. Okay, bright blue. Floating blue, dark blue, and oatmeal splashed over it. So I'm not stilt firing these, I'm basically just firing them because I kind of like the foot the way it is anyway. And but that's the tomato red, ketchup red. It's the dark blue and oatmeal over the top. I haven't noticed too much difference now unpacking this fire into the other one, so there really isn't any reason to use either, either or of these firings. You can use either to get all of these results, because the mouse grey was the one I was trying to get a little matter. A little baking dish. This was left over from a previous firing and I reglazed it. I didn't like the way it came out last time. It's a little better this time. And a couple more of the candle holders. I just made these for fun. A lot of people live off grid around here with no electricity, so you always see a lot of candles for sale at little farmers markets and such. And that's it. Yep. So basically, these two firing profiles, I'll show them one more time. Doesn't matter which of these you use, the glazes came out the same, so you can freeze this frame and then take a screenshot.